Hello and welcome to the Political Frontline. My special guest today is the French arms expert Edmond Huet. Edmond, welcome to the Political Frontline.
Bonjour, thank you for your invitation.
Edmond, what is the Strata Forum and what is the mission of this organization?
Strata Forum is a division of Center for Military and Political Studies that had been launched by Dmitry Timchuk from Information Resistance, and because something was needed in English language. So we had the idea to launch this division, and I was invited to be the arms expert there because I participated already to many actions with people of Information Resistance and Euromaidan for more than a year and a half.
What kind of activities does the Strata Forum do?
Trying to inform people, trying to search for the facts behind all
the real facts.
The real facts. And the real facts based on irrefutable events with evidences that nobody can deny.
You are a French arms expert. Let's talk about MH17. The first anniversary of the MH17, but it is still unknown who shot it, why, and so on. What do you think about this one?
Unknown, I wouldn't say it is unknown. I would say it is not official.
Official, I mean official.
Because, in fact, almost exactly 1 year ago, I was invited by BFM TV as an arms expert to analyze and to try to understand what happened that day. I was very active at that moment with Euromaidan Press, and I first identified at the beginning of the year ammunition and equipment used by Yanushevsky's Berkuts against the people in Maidan. So after that moment, everybody sent me all the documents to analyze. So I was very active and involved with Euromaidan Press at that moment when the MH17 was shot down. And I was invited in France by specialists and people on TV station and radio to give my opinion. Being active with what happened here, I, for example, knew the first day what happened from some documents we received. For example, pictures and videos of the book launcher that was hidden, for example, under the shadow of a building to being not to being too visible for air.
You mean satellite photos, yes?
Yes. And we knew the first day already that it was going after the murder. It was going to the Russian border. What is now appearing like something wonderful, new scoop, etc., was already known the first day, because we, and not only we, but we had so many followers that they could tell us what was going on. They were in eastern Ukraine, there were videos on YouTube, there were photos, there were selfies of people who had brought the book M, don't forget it's a book M, the modified, the modernized version, the latest in the Russian arsenal. And after that they tried to muddy the waters, saying it was a book seized from the Ukrainian arsenal. That was totally untrue. And they proudly demonstrated they had a book M on the social networks. Social networks is a wonderful way of practicing open intel, find information, and then after that you have to sort out all that you have. But it seems Russians and Russians-backed militants are so proud of themselves for what they are doing. They have posted so many informations on VKontakte, for example, the Russian Facebook, that now we even have pictures of the operators of the book. And then fate made that some journalists, French journalists of Paris Match, made an investigation work that was really could be a model, because they could trace the flatbed trailer that is normally used by a local transport company in Donbass to transport construction cranes, and they had been able to follow it and to get pictures of it near the Russian border, ready to cross into Russia. They took pictures, it was a scoop, with the logo of the shipping company, and the day after, some people posted in Russia on YouTube selfies and videos from their dashboard camera showing the same vehicle with a military escort into the Russian territory. And right now, another information just out by Inform Napalm. That's wonderful. The panel of sources that you have if you really want to search. The same vehicle, the same truck, has re-entered Ukraine and has been used to transport some main battle tanks that were damaged during the Debaltsevo battle in Donbass. Exactly the same vehicle with the same decoration of the doors and the same logo on the cabin. So there is absolutely no doubt that it was a Russian book that donned the Boeing.
Okay, does the international society has a doubt who was the assassin of MH17? Why does the assassins are not in jail?
Why does nobody say that Putin is having a war of aggression in Ukraine? Many people, and when I say people, I mean among the people who govern us, the top
politicians.
They are the chief of states. They are just not saying it officially because they estimate that as long as they say that, as they don't say that there is a war will not exist. And I think they can contain Putin by sanction, by some administration, but it does not work with someone like Putin. So about the MH17, it's exactly the same thing. Nobody dares to say Putin is the murderer.
They are afraid or what?
They are afraid of World War III. They are afraid that saying exactly who Putin is and what he does, you have to take some action. As long as you don't admit officially, you know, Western nations are really formal. For example, it seems there is no war as long as there is not a declaration of war. Exactly what is happening in eastern Ukraine. And so the only thing is, it's kind of hybrid war. Hybrid war was launched many years ago already by Russia after the fall of Soviet Union, thinking that they can make it another way. Instead of launching the Warsaw Pact armies against NATO and Western Europe, they have tried another way. They experienced it in Georgia in 2008. They are so-called peacekeepers, and they come to protect population, Russian-speaking population. It was a kind of rehearsal in 2008 in Georgia, and it's happening now. It has happened in Crimea, and it is happening now in eastern Ukraine. So it's not the type of war we knew before, and the West has completely been taken by surprise. Because it's very easy when you have all the troops of an army moving into another country, wearing their official uniforms with identification marks on their vehicles and on their equipment. You can say Russia invades Ukraine. What did they do? Little green men. And they say there is no Russian in Crimea. A few months after, they were obliged to admit they were Russian in Crimea. But now they won't say that there are Russians in eastern Ukraine, but we know they are. For already since August last year, 15 paratroopers had been captured from the Russian Federation forces. And to go back to the the events of the MH17, why did the Russian forces enter eastern Ukraine? For a few reasons. First, the ATO was started end of spring. Beginning of July, it had a huge success. It was unexpected.
Because the Ukrainian army was
completely done. The Ukrainian army was done. At the moment Crimea was seized, the Ukrainian army was done. Around 6,000 people who were battle ready. When I was a young conscript in the French forces in Germany, there were 1 million people ready to fight under the Ukrainian uniform, the Soviet Union uniform. And we knew exactly, since I was based in south of Germany, we knew exactly who we had in front of us among the Soviet groups. And it was the First Army of Ukraine. And we knew they were terribly well equipped, trained. There were 1 million people in the armed forces of Ukraine. If you counted all the reserve people, all those already trained, all the military organizations, the law enforcement organization, you had 5 million people able to fight in this country. And you had enough equipment, 7 million of small arms and light weapons to equip them. Among them, you can say that 2 million of these weapons were quite outdated, good for guerrilla, but nothing else. But at that moment, they had all the equipment, the armament, the ammunition to arm, feed, transport all these soldiers. Had the offensive of the Warsaw Pact started, like it almost happened twice in 1953.
Some say, Mr. Huet, some say that history repeats. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
How can you evaluate, how can you assess the Ukrainian army for now?
Every day without engaging an open full combat with the Russian forces in Ukraine has allowed Ukraine to reinforce. First, with the volunteers, they have done a wonderful job. Second, with all the people who helped from outside the diaspora, the Ukrainian or non-Ukrainian people who participated to donations, to send equipment, to send everything that was needed. Because it was unexpected. In fact, Ukraine didn't play the game like Russia expected. Russia expected a casus belli, a case of war, to officially use it for their propaganda, saying we have been shot at by Ukrainian forces in Crimea. It did not happen. So that's the first time Ukraine didn't play according to the plan that had been drawn in Russia. The second case, the second time, is Eastern Ukraine on a few points. First, we know that all these riots, popular riots of locals, had been organized by Russia. We know that Igor Girkin, officially admitted he was a colonel of the FSB, and without him, all would have been wound down in a few weeks.
I wonder why he's still alive after all these actions.
That's one of the questions I have to. I'm just wondering, are they using, well, you know, Russia with the Maskarova, Maskarova is the Russian name, and the Russian word, I think, for camouflaging an action, making a smoke screen. I'm just wondering if finally he is not one of the components of this smoke screen.
Let's move to MH17 again. As you know, 5 countries, Australia, Belgium, Malaysia, the Netherlands and Ukraine, ask United Nations Security Council to establish MH17 tribunal. What is your assessment concerning this tribunal? Will it succeed the expectations or not?
First, let's remember that Putin's Russia is clamoring that Ukraine is responsible for the downing of the MH17. They have used all type of lies, all type of propagandas, over and over again for months. But since the beginning, they claim Ukraine is responsible and they want an international investigation. Now that this international investigation is officially required, but through the United Nations. And through the United Nations, every country is obliged to abide to the decision of the United Nations and is obliged to offer assistance in the investigation. Suddenly, what do the Minister of Foreign Affairs declare in Russia? That it's not the right time to do it, and that in fact it's not good to make it now, because they know that they will lose in the end. Just like their conflict against Ukraine, and if they go up one step higher by accident or willingly to a continental war, a continental conflict, they know that in the end they will lose. They know that in the end their lies will be demonstrated. There are enough evidence since the beginning, because themselves, again because of their selfies and their overuse of social network, At the very moment the MH17 was down, Girkin himself on his page posted that they had just done an Antonov 26 that did not exist. And SBU, being well trained by his masters, KGB and FSB, has intercepted for many months conversation between all those people acting in eastern Ukraine, and especially at the moment of the downing of MH17, some conversation between those who shot, those who handled the book, those who were the first people on the crash site, and those who organized it. Girkin, this has been published, and they say it's not an Antonov 26, it is a civilian plane, and there are some passports, some toys, some kids, some women.
Can we expect from international society a verdict of the tribunal? A verdict that will say that Russia is guilty, Russia is the assassin, and so on?
I think we have to wait for the official investigation report that is to be rendered normally in October, coming October. But right now, many elements have been supplied to start the case in United Nations, and not only there. Families have got access to the investigation, and I learned today that 18 British families are starting a case against Putin, asking for almost $900 million US, under the rule that in the US there is a law that if some people have been submitted to war crime, they can be pursued, even if they are foreign citizens. So these British lawyers are using this law to oblige the international justice to investigate. Now let's not forget that 2 days ago, if I remember well, Russia declared that any law or any verdict or any investigation that is against the Russian constitution will not have any force of law. So I think things are clear. It will mean say whatever you want, we won't never admit any verdict of the international community. That's why I'm afraid we are running to the big one, World War III. We are living exactly what our parents lived in 1938-39, when it was still possible to stop another crazy man in Europe. Nobody did. But right now, we have so much access to the informations. Just make your brain work.
Ignoring just the small problems, we get the bigger one.
Ignoring the attitude of Russia, we are running to war. Because every time we ignore, we feign to ignore that something exists, that will go one step further.
We will have a small pause and then we will continue our program. My special guest today is Strata Forum French arms expert Edmond Huet. Edmond, continue our program.
Yes.
Edmond, what can we expect from Russia, for example, in autumn? Does the Russia have a new plan how to make this conflict hot?
Taking it lightly, I will say my crystal ball is broken. Taking it more seriously, war is by nature unpredictable. Putin is totally unpredictable. So they are playing by the book until now. Many times I predicted some events that happen. I couldn't give a dateline because you never know what will happen on the other side. And it is clear that what can Putin do? He has heated so much his public opinion against the enemy from outside. He needs that. He needs an enemy outside. It seems like Russia and Soviet Union always needed. But even worse in his case, he centralized all the power. If he does not move, he falls. It means we can expect going one step further. We have again new humanitarian convoys arriving, and we see suddenly the shelling of Ukrainian position grows up immediately. There will be no pause, no stop. He has not respected any agreement like Minsk I or Minsk II, Why do you want him to stop now?
Because does there exist any keys how to cooperate with Putin, or no? Or he understands only power, force, and strength?
Yeah, the only key is a big stick.
A big stick.
It seems that's the only thing he understands. He is playing exactly, you know, he admires Lenin and Stalin. He's playing exactly like that. Like Lenin said, when attacking the Western capitalist, use your bayonet and dig. If it resists, pull back. If it does not resist, move forward. He is doing it.
Does the Russia has a tactic for Crimea and for eastern part of the Ukraine?
Does Russia?
Does the Russia has a tactic?
Tactic, what do you mean?
Tactics.
Oh, tactics.
Tactics, yes.
Yes, of course. The hybrid war that they've experienced, that they've owned for years, it seems, in fact, they started more than 14 years ago to prepare an hybrid war. Now, it seems, fortunately for them and for us, they are not acting, but reacting. As I said, they didn't expect the Ukrainian reaction, so they are lost. Exactly like Russia, Soviet Union was lost in front of Hitler because they had prepared for a war of offensive and they had to play a defensive war. And that's why they lost so much people. And right now it's the same thing. The Ukrainians didn't accept to play the way it was in the Russian plan. So the only tactic they have now is trying to freeze the conflict, like in Transnistria. That's all that they have left. And try to neutralize Ukraine. Ukraine is potentially a danger for them in many points. But the most important point is showing that a former Soviet country can succeed and can go on the path of democracy. And that Putin does not want it.
I have read one of your article. The name of your article is Russia has been preparing global war which starts in Ukraine. Why do you think so? You think this is only the beginning of the...
This is not exactly my article. I participated on some points. This is one of my colleagues' article. Russia wants to recreate the former empire. It's a mixture of the Russian Empire, the Great Russia, Soviet Union, and it's a mixture of Nazism, Bolshevism. It's all mixed up. It's a kind of soup. But one thing is sure, the Russian people are following their leader on that path. So we can expect the worst.
Let's talk about one partner of the Ukraine, the NATO. Do you believe that Ukraine has a chance to become a NATO member in short term?
Short term, no.
Middle term?
I think after the war.
After what, sorry?
After the war, after reforms will have been implemented in Russia, in Ukraine, on everything. In fact, NATO cannot accept a country at war. That's why there is an ATO, anti-terrorist operation, and no war officially. But there is so much to do, to change, to reform. For the time being, Ukraine, on the military part, is still a kind of Soviet entity. Right now, it has changed because of the volunteers. But the volunteers have to be really integrated into the Ukrainian armed forces. Fortunately, they were here because there was not much people to fight at that moment 1 year ago. Now there are some events that happen. It shows that some people are really fed up with corruption, with other things that are still not taken care of. But I think Ukraine will become a NATO. That's the only chance of Ukraine to survive as a nation.
And the last question, what is the term of this conflict? Do you have any ideas of how long this conflict will hold? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years?
It's totally unpredictable. We cannot refer to any other conflicts we know. Putin is so unreadable, because even people who can read it, I will tell them something about what happened in Lebanon with the civil war there for many years and all the conflict between religion. That is saying that if you understand the situation in Middle East, you have too much information. I would say exactly the same. We cannot say how it will end. I'm afraid it will end in a continental war. I pray I'm wrong.
On that not positive note, Edmond Huet, Strata Forum French arm expert, thanks for being on Political Frontline.
Thanks a lot for the invitation.
Yes, thanks.